This video will be a little different. I hope it's the only time I have to record something serious. But over the last few months, the channel has grown at a rate that I found truly amazing. Because let's be blunt, I'm nobody. People don't stop me in the street and say, "You're that YouTuber, Disgruntled Danny." And to anyone who takes the time out of their day to watch my pointless ramblings that I post 3 or 4 times a week, I thank you so much. But as the channel has grown, I'm now starting to get haters. People who are actively trying to get me cancelled, labelling me a bigot, a transphobe, all the ists and isms. So today I'm going to set the record straight and explain why I record the videos that I do. First and foremost, the basic idea behind this channel is to try and make people laugh, whilst often making a serious or semi-serious point. That's why I look for oddities and absurdities in the news, and something that really fascinates me is the way that in almost every minority group, there's a minority within that minority who are very vocal, who go out of their way to ruin it for everyone, to get the whole group tarred with the same brush. Now, I'm part of a minority group. I'm left-handed. Famous left-handers include Leonardo da Vinci and Osama bin Laden. Now, I am not the greatest artist who ever lived, nor am I a terrorist mastermind, but I am a left-handed man with a beard. So some people could look at that and think, left-handed men with beards are either artists or terrorists. Of course, that isn't the case. I'm one of the mediocre. For me, being left-handed just means having crap handwriting and that the handle for the washing machine and the microwave are on the wrong side. That's the point I'm usually trying to make. A vocal minority ruining it for everyone else. There is actually a name for the fear of left-handed people. It's called sinistrophobia. Sinister means of the left. Another famous left-hander is the late, great Rick Mayall. A man who starred in 2 of my favourite sitcoms of all time, The Young Ones from the 1980s, and from the 1990s when I was a teenager, Bottom. In both series, he starred alongside Ade Edmondson, and it was in Bottom where Ade, playing the character Eddie Hitler in a very violent, anarchic sitcom, delivered what for me is one of the greatest lines of dialogue of all time. Look, you get born, you keep your head down, and then you die. If you're lucky. It's so bleak, but so true. For many of us, that's what life is. Yet it is the small but vocal minorities who fuck it up for everyone. Another example comes from football, a sport I know very little about. In England, in the 1980s and early 90s, there was a problem with football hooligans. So, at football matches, the vast majority of people there were just there to cheer on their team, to enjoy themselves. But there were these minorities who didn't go there for fun. They went there to hurl racist abuse at the players, to fight the opposing hooligans, and if they couldn't do that, then to riot with the police. And even though that was in the last century, their legacy lives on, because in the UK, at certain football matches, when the away team supporters turn up at the train station, they're met by police in full riot gear. Once again, a tiny minority messed it up for everyone. Not for me, though, because I don't watch it. Now, I think I've done the groundwork now to make my point. So I'm now going to say a sentence that I've said so many times, I may as well have it tattooed across my fucking forehead. The vast majority of trans people are just trying to live their lives. And if you're watching this and that's you, I wish you the very best. I really do. Yet, over the last few months, I've made so many videos on gender ideology, and there are reasons for that. First of all, it's never out of the news. Secondly, source material is so easy to find. People ask me in the comments, where do you get this from? 5 minutes on TikTok, I'll have enough to do an entire video. And thirdly, once again, it's the small but very vocal minority who, to me, make the ideology dangerous. For example, the inquest into the Tavistock clinic, which mercifully has been closed down now, which operated right here in the UK, found that many of the young women, and these were teenage girls, fast-tracked onto gender reassignment surgery, in some cases had had only 2 counselling sessions. before having life-altering, unnecessary surgery, double mastectomies. It found that many of these young women weren't trans at all. They were actually autistic. And autism covers a huge spectrum. But therapists were looking at these young women and asking them, do you think you'd be happier if you were a boy? And for some autistic people, they can't process that information. They went along with it. And now we're seeing huge numbers of detransitioners. And what really scares me is I think we're heading into possibly the biggest mental health crisis the world has ever seen. And that's sort of where I come in. I'll read these terrible stories or see terrible videos and think, how can I get this information out there, but in a way which people will find amusing? For example, a few weeks ago, I posted a video about a teaching assistant who'd been fired from her job for posting TikToks encouraging young children to go on puberty blockers. These are what they use in some states of the USA to chemically castrate sex offenders. Now, it transpired the teaching assistant was non-binary, so people will call me whatever non-binary phobia is. But her behaviour was extremely bizarre, so my thought was, I'll just take the piss out of her. Because, generally speaking, I take the piss out of anyone. I've done it with white supremacists, racists in general, race hustlers and grifters, men who are abusive to women. I've even took the piss out of terrorists. Most of us will remember the atrocity, the Manchester Arena bombing. I was at that arena a week before it happened. If the suicide bomber, or rather mass murderer, had gone a week early, I could have been walking into that. At the time, I was posting videos which, if they got 5 views, I was on a winner. And when I learned that the suicide bomber had drawn his inspiration from ISIS, I started calling ISIS the cave-dwelling goat fuckers. Because if something is frightening, if we can mock it or laugh at it, then it loses its power over us. For example, the funniest headline I've ever read was in 2001. So for anyone watching who's old enough to remember the 9/11 terror attacks, and my channel stats suggest that most of you are, the fear that there was around the world after 9/11, I've never known anything like it. Every day the papers would be suggesting that Al-Qaeda were going to attack us with sarin gas or anthrax or require a dirty bomb. But the day after the US-led invasion of Afghanistan, the satirical newspaper The Onion ran with the headline, "Holy fucking shit," with the subhead, "God re-emphasises his no-killing rule." And that made it funny. It took the pressure off. And that's sort of what I try to do. Because if we think again of those young women from the Tavistock Clinic, if we sat and thought about what they've actually been through, we wouldn't laugh. We'd fucking cry. Of course, adults can do whatever they want. Although I would never encourage someone to medically transition. For some people they do, and then everything's fine. And if that's you, I am so happy for you. However, we also know that for those who do choose to medically transition, peak suicidality comes 5 years after transitioning. Because, like all of us, many trans people, they've got their demons. And they may have been told that transitioning will cure all that. But 5 years down the line, the mental health problems are still there. They spent thousands on their surgery and possibly wrecked their immune systems. So 5 years after transition, they can't take it anymore. That's tragic. So when I make my videos, in particular those on gender ideology, I'm not coming from a place of hatred. It's more, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for anyone, in particular younger people, thinking of transitioning, who are getting their advice from fucking TikTok. I would say go and talk to a therapist. Get to know what's going on under the surface. Now, I've mentioned a few times on this channel that I used to be a therapist. I know, I can't believe it either. But I've never gone into what it was I actually did. And after this video, I'll probably never mention it again. As a younger man, I trained up as a counsellor, a psychotherapist, using my own money off my own back. And once I was qualified, I volunteered for a number of different charities. I have never charged a penny for my services because I figured I had a full-time job. If I needed help, I could afford it. There are some people, though, who can't, who still can't today. And the area I specialised in was working with survivors of rape and childhood sexual abuse. And if you're a counsellor working in that field, very quickly you develop an extremely dark sense of humour, because if you don't, you simply burn out. Because it's shocking that once you scratch the surface, there is so much evil in the world. So that leads me to an anecdote. Many years ago, I was working on a helpline. And if you've ever phoned a helpline, something you may not know is usually there are two people on the other end. There's the person you're talking to, and there's someone silently listening, making notes for the person doing the talking. Now, this helpline was for survivors of abuse, but the phone number was 1 digit out from an electricity supplier and 2 out from the local airport. We got a hell of a lot of wrong numbers. But on this fateful night, the phone rang and I answered. And the guy on the other end was frantic. His speech was somewhere between screaming and crying. The first word my listener wrote was location, because this guy sounds like he's on the edge. We may need to get emergency services involved. After around 10 minutes, I calmed him down to the point that I could say, "Can you tell me what's happened?" And he told me the fuse board has exploded. He was meant to be calling the fucking electric supplier. So I had to tell him, "Mate, you've got a wrong number." At the end of that call, though, as I put down the receiver, I turned to my listener and said, because you need gallows humour, if the Sparky rapes him, at least he can call back. So, in the present day, when I see someone crying uncontrollably on TikTok because they've been referred to as he rather than they, I think if that's your biggest problem, life's pretty sweet, really, isn't it? That's the end of this video. If you got this far, well done. If you enjoyed it, and fuck knows why you would have done, please do like and subscribe, and as ever, thanks for watching. Luckily, I've made loads of fuck-ups, so there are some bloopers. Different to the others I usually post. Hopefully this will be the only... Oh, good fucking start, Dan. Was the late, great Rick Mayall. A comic genius who starred in 2 of my favourite sitcoms, from the 1980s, The Young Ones, and from the 1990s, Bottom. And I was a teenager in the 90s, so that I've fucked that up so many times. I've said it so many times, I've fucked it up. Stock Clinic, which mercifully was recently closed down right here in the UK. And there had been warnings about that institution for a good 20 years. Had then... No, I forgot it. Why am I standing like this? What's in my invisible shopping bag? Anyway, the Tavistock Clinic, which was recently closed down, mercifully, right here in the UK, and there had been warning signs about this clinic for fucked it up again.